So welcome people. My name is Jensen J. Songo, and today we are going to be having an esports and SG podcast. And I have I'm very honored to have three guests today here. One of them, Anthony Lim, was one of the top CS players in the Singaporean scene itself. I've invited national fencer Justin Ong as well, gold medalist in the previous SEA Games, as well as Vice President of SCOGA, Rueben, to share with us their insights on this topic itself. So this podcast is about to start up in a matter of seconds over there. So do go online, share this on Facebook, let your friends know. Anybody, especially Singaporean males out there who might be interested in sports or esports, come on, come on to this podcast and hear. And perhaps you might gain some insight as to what the process of, say, getting deferments from army is like. Okay, let me try to adjust my mic a little bit. Hopefully it's better now. Okay, with that, let's start off with a round of introductions. I'm a shoutcaster for League of Legends for Garena. I've been coaching League of Legends teams for about over a year already. And I've served my time in national service as a third sergeant in the Air Force. I didn't really do too much. I mean, I might a little bit of experience doing urban ops here and there, but wasn't too much of a very meaningful or complete wholesome national service packages. But some of the other people out there. But nonetheless, national service is a topic that we always like to discuss, especially in the Singaporean context. Some people love it, some people hate it. It's a very polarizing topic. And when it comes to the narrative of national service and sports, national service and music, it's always about the same few lines that's always being rehashed. But today we're going to be taking a deeper look into that, and we have got three guests over here to share with us their insights from their positions as to how much of a detriment is national service really, and what can we do to try to improve the situation or perhaps help our sportsmen and gamers out in the situation. So let's start with Anthony ImpressioN.
Hey, first of all, thanks for having me here. I'm Anthony Lim. I'm also known as Impression. That's my online alias. I'm currently playing Counter Strike Global Offensive for Team Dreamscape. Um, and well, I mean, with for everything that with the topic that we're covering today, I'm currently a full-time national serviceman. Fortunately for me, I am stay-out personnel, so I get to go home whenever I don't have to stay in, basically. And yeah, that's basically about me. I've played games. I've played PC games since I was like 5 years old. Since like 15 years ago, I played various different genres of competitive games. I've basically started out FPS. I started out Blackshot, went to Battlefield Bad Company 2. I played League of Legends for a while as well, and then I basically came back to what I felt was my true calling, which was Counter Strike, and I've been playing Counter Strike ever since. And yeah, that's about it from me lah, as an introduction.
Okay, moving on, let's move on to Justin. Justin, could you let our audience know who you are, what your previous accomplishments have been, and perhaps why you have come onto this podcast?
Hi, my name is Justin. I'm currently a first year student from architecture in NUS. I've been doing competitive sport for around like 8 years now. So not an expert in the e-gaming scene, but I hope I can share some insight from a pure sports point of view. I was invited by Jensen Go. I really hope I can help the growing esport community in Singapore. Thanks.
So for those of you who don't know, Justin Ong, he was one of the SEA Games gold medalists in the previous SEA Games. I do believe he won in the team EPI event. Is that how you pronounce it? EP or EPI? Or was it a foil?
Happy, but I do
Epi.
follow.
Okay,
Follow.
sorry.
Yeah,
That was my mistake. But either way, he is one of our national fences, and he has experience getting deferments in national service or privileges in national service. I'm not sure how he would want to phrase it as a national athlete, and he will be sharing with us his experiences in national service later on when we talk about what other exact structures the athletes do get in Singapore itself. And our last guest for today, Ruben, take it away.
Hi, I'm Ruben Conceicao. My IGN is Kidon. I'm from SCOGA. I'm the Vice President of SCOGA. I was formerly a CS 1.6, CS Source, CS Go player, and coach for Team Titans many years ago. I oversaw an entire team of players that went into NS, came out of NS, and kept playing still no matter what. And I myself served NS in the Singapore Police Force. So I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for that.
Okay, so I mean, this topic of a national service in the Singaporean context has been rather, like I mentioned earlier, a rather polarizing one. We have heard all the big stories about how first departure, people blaming the government and everything about how national service and stuff like that have kind of screwed athletes and esports in general over. But from what we have heard, there's been lots of anecdotal evidence to suggest otherwise. That at some points of time, there have been athletes, or rather esports athletes, who have been able to gain deferments and have been able to move out of the country, participate in tournaments itself. So let's start by trying to establish how much does national service actually detriment a player's pursuit in the esports. So Anthony, let's start with you.
Mm, yeah, for that, right? I'm currently serving as a driver. Okay, my vocation is a driver, and I'm posted in Tuas Naval Base. I have to travel. Because I stay at personnel. Basically, I have to travel like an hour every day to get to camp, and I have to travel an hour every day to get back home. And I think the most detrimental thing of national service to any athlete, be it like esports or actually professional sports, would be how time consuming it would be, and as well as how little flexibility and for esports recognition that it gets in within the SAF or within the RSAF or the RSN. The amount of, I would say, flexibility that I have is actually quite limited. I mean, I personally get some flexibility in terms of like planning my duties, taking my off days, and planning my leaves. But the thing is that there's still the fact that you have to at least clear a certain amount of points in terms of duties, or there are certain details that requires a lot of time, such as I support range. Uh, I support range details. I support outfield details. I have drove from Tuas to like Changi just to get on a ferry to go into Tekong. And sometimes when you have, I mean, no matter how I look at it, I so-called owe a responsibility to the nation. That's why I'm serving national service, and whatever it is that the army needs me to do, I'll have to do it. And because of that, there is little flexibility in like when tournament comes, like very how do I put it, like they get announced like really last minute, and suddenly I have to plan for my days, like my off days or my leaves whatsoever, into like actually attending the tournament. It becomes quite problematic. So that's where flexibility actually like hurts esports, okay, or professional amateur gamer, be it whoever it is, so long as you're in national service. And another thing would be why I say time consuming is actually, I mean, like I mentioned previously, fortunately I'm stay out personnel, so I basically work from 8 to 5. I I get home at like 6 every night if I'm lucky, because there's trains and everything. But in order for me to actually train daily, right, and to schedule myself, because in the current game that I'm playing, Counter Strike Global Offensive, each team has 5 players. If anybody doesn't know about it, and the other 4 players that I'm playing with, one is working. One actually owns his own shop. Uh, One is a doctor, and the other two, uh, basically they're still studying. I'm actually like very honored to be able to be playing with them, because they are currently so-called the best team in Singapore. And I mean, one of the players is only 17, hasn't even enlisted yet. He's in IT lah, and especially if anybody has ever heard of him, he's a really good player. He has been playing for a very long time, and eventually he has to enter NS as well. And this is where scheduling is a very big problem, because every night when I get home, like I have dinner, I shower, everything is 7 p.m. I start training all the way until 12, and then I go to sleep. I have to wake up at 6 again, just to go and attend, like get back into camp the next day. And I mean, it's very fortunate that I actually get to do this. But the thing is that I'm also sacrificing stuff such as time with my family, time with my friends. In a sense, I basically have no social life right now outside of my team, because I'm dedicating and committing all the time that I have left outside, while I'm not in camp, while not wearing green, while not so-called serving the nation, to my team, in order to become the best in Asia. And it's not something that's easily done, because in Asia there's so many other countries, and there's so many other teams that basically do so much, like they get so much more free time, like for example NXL. from Indonesia. They have a gaming house of their own. They don't have any commitments other than playing the game, and they are really good at the game. If we had the same, if I or the players in Singapore had the same amount of time to train and play that way, I think Singapore would actually be a lot bigger on the esports map, at least in Southeast Asia. So yeah, back to the question, the most detrimental thing is that it's time consuming. And because it's time consuming, it leads to many other factors, many other situations and circumstances where I have my family once telling me that I'm not spending enough time with them. They feel that I don't, I'm basically like out of their lives ever since I started NS, because ever since I started NS, all the other free time I have, I've committed to the game. And that's, in a sense, it's not only just time consuming, the time consumption actually brings forward to other relations in life.
Now that's something that some of us can relate to a certain extent, and I do believe you have some stories as well as into your adventures overseas and how national service actually wasn't exactly too supportive of that.
Yeah, basically for me, last year I represented Singapore um in the World Championships 2015, which is a tournament hosted by EFRAG, Electronic Frag, and that tournament basically has had like 84 90 different nations, countries participating in the qualifier, and whoever had won in the qualifier then went on to the main stage, the grand, like so-called the finals, which was held in Serbia, Belgrade of Serbia. And I was actually we were actually somewhat invited to go over to Serbia to actually play under the so-called Team Singapore, because we were basically we're one of the nations that qualified in that qualifier. And going to Serbia for me was actually it was somewhat last minute thing. I was informed like 2 weeks before that I had to go overseas. And I then approached one of my I actually approached my OC. In a sense, he was my OC at the point of time. I'm my officer in command of the company that I was in, which is a Tuas transport node, a Tuas land transport office back then. And I actually told him about this. I said that I could, I showed him like news articles, I showed him online articles, but when I told him about this, I asked him if whether I could get some offs to go to either attend training or to actually reimburse my overseas leaves, which I had. I had like a limited amount back then to, basically for me to get even more prepared going into Serbia, which we were playing against like all the top nations in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. I mean, France was there, a lot of Sweden was there, Russia was there, a lot of big names. I went over there, I saw a lot of, really internationally famous players. And what my OC told me back then was basically that this, what I quote him, okay, is basically what he said was, this type of thing isn't really recognized, so I can't really do anything for you. And that was it. I then approached my MTO, which is basically like your platoon commander, is a mobile transport officer. And I asked him if he could go back to HQ, because I was in company. I'm under the third SF transfer battalion. I asked him if he could go back to the company and ask like perhaps the CO, which is the commanding officer of the battalion, and like maybe other MTOs or any regulars back at HQ, if they could, help me out, like maybe reimburse some of the off days that, because I burned all my leaves. I had 6 days of leave left, and I had to use all of them just to go overseas and play and then come back. So I asked my MTO to help me out, see what he could do. He was okay. He was okay with actually trying. And when I came back from Serbia and he finally spoke to me, what he told me was that nobody really recognizes such a thing. And that was basically somewhat of a problem for me, because I basically just had to work like a horse all the way until the end of the year, because I didn't have any leaves or offs left. And every day was just, and back then when I came back from Serbia, I was still actually playing like competitively. I was playing in the ESCA league, and I wasn't performing at all throughout the period of time after I came back from Serbia back in October all the way until December. That was a very it was a really very tiring period of national service for me, because day in day out I was just either doing details of duty, and there wasn't. And I when once I get home, if I can even go home, I have to start training. And at the point of time, the fatigue level, it was insane. I would say I wasn't performing at even. It was really suboptimal, my type of performance during that period of time. And then things happens within teams as well. We had a lot of problems because I'm basically like, in a sense, I'm basically like the carry of the team, in a sense, to the people who are the League of Legends viewers, or the Dota viewers. In a sense, how do I put it? I'll basically be trying to carry the team, and I frag a lot and all that. I get a very positive scoreline most of the time. But during that period of time after I came back from Serbia, right, it was I just wasn't I wasn't even playing the game. It felt like I was there because I was just there. I most of the games I played, most of the trainings I attended, I was so zoned out because I was so tired, and then I wasn't letting shots. I wasn't thinking straight, and that just doesn't help at all.
I mean, that's definitely unfortunate to hear about. So this is something that I think is a quite a common storyline amongst national service about pro players who are experiencing national service. So Ruben has been a coach for his CS team as well, and he has been able to mentor some of these players through their experiences in national service. Would you like to share some of your stories?
Yeah, well, for us, it's a little bit different and also a bit the same, in the sense that we had a very mixed bag of experiences. Most of them were actually quite positive because in our time there was a tournament called the World Cyber Games, and whoever won that was given the official recognition as Team Singapore. So I guess our situation is slightly different, Anthony. I think you know what I mean.
Yep.
We get a bit more recognition, and right now in SCOGA we try to continue helping gamers like yourself. We try wherever possible to support gamers that are representing Singapore and represent themselves as well in a correct way, as a wholesome, positive influence for gamers. I think we try to approach it from that perspective. There are negative moments that we had to go through. Once we couldn't even get our captain for an important game in the World Cyber Games. Ironically, we couldn't get him out because there were operational requirements. But no matter what, we also understand defense of the nation has to come first. It's unpleasant, obviously, because at that moment you're thinking, "Wow, we're going to represent the country. We're going to do a great job." Then you kind of realize that you don't have your strongest lineup. On another note, also, I mean, I have personally overseen not just the 5 players that I started with, but more than that, because as we go along, you rotate your lineup. So I had about 8 players that had to go through the NS process under me. And generally, my advice to them was try not to disrupt your time in there too much. Finish it fast and come out fast. And before that time, the prevalent thinking was, if you go to NS, that's the end of your gaming career. Then I reminded everybody, if you look at the top class gamers in the world, they are all peaking at 22, 23, 24, 25. They may make a name for themselves younger, but they will actually really peak later. So don't be afraid. And true enough, my guys kept working hard. They really believe in this and push hard. And after they came out within 2 years, all of them got paid contracts to play in an international league, and they were featured on TV and everything. So it was a really interesting experience from my perspective.
Well, that's definitely the case over there for what used to happen in the past. I mean, there's something that's changed. We talk about it later on. Is into to how the landscape has changed a little bit. And Team Singapore, that branding is definitely something that definitely helps indeed. So let's hear from somebody who has had the branding. It's not just it's not an esports athlete, but as a national athlete. Justin, when you first enlisted into NS, what were your thoughts about how NS was going to affect your performance as an athlete?
Well, NS for me, I mean, it was very imposing, like in a sense, like I have many friends who were national athletes in the youth categories and all, and once they entered NS, basically they said, you know what, we give up we stop. You don't do this sport anymore. So yeah, at first when I went in, I thought like, okay, I'm gonna look at this first. I see maybe if it's too much, I can't continue on, because really I think one of the most important things in any sports, it's consistency. So once we enter NS, right, we totally break that consistency. It's gone. Our momentum is lost. So it's very difficult to get back into the track of things when you have to go to camp here, you go to camp there, you need to go for training. Suddenly your boss says, "Oh, can't go for training." You need to come back office. Then you like what? Then you there's it's very difficult to keep it constant. But I think I've been lucky enough. I mean, more background myself. I was fortunately, okay, fortunate or not, I don't know. I have a knee injury, so I was PES. So I luckily enough, I work in an office. So I pretty much 5 to 8. Although I was supposed to stay in. I think I was lucky so that I got a boss who allowed me to go for training. So yeah, I had to I had to jump through many hoops in order to continue my fencing. So anyway, how the structure is for like excuses from army officially, it's actually very difficult. Like for example, the SEA Games or any other games, you only get the ability to go out and train only after you have been confirmed as part of the like SEA Games team. And even then, your association has to go through a series of red tape in order to get your name on the list. Then your boss has to approve, your commander has to approve. Once everything is done, then you get back to you. They say, okay, you have like every day now you have from 1 p.m. off for training. So yeah, it doesn't mean that once you are a national athlete, you get to come out and train. There's still many things that need to be done. So it's very tough. I would like to say that because like must understand, like to get into the team you have to train before, and let's say you have no time to train, so how do you even get on the team? So yeah, that's something to think about.
Now that's interesting you bring it up. So I mean, previously when I was asking you, what's the exact system of how do they qualify? What's this training? You mentioned that there's this system of there being covered athletes where you must be able to acquire certain number of circuit points. Does this hold true for most sports as well across the board?
I'm not too sure. I'm only experienced with the swimming and fencing community. For swimming, it's less complicated. Swimming is basically they have this qualifying competition. Then you do the swim. If you are like the best 2 or 3, then you're representing Singapore in the coming competition. Fencing, it's more like a circuit thing. It's done internationally as well. You accumulate points over the year, and then basically when you're in the top few, you are in the team.
So just to clarify, it's a case by case basis kind of thing, depending on the type of sport and what is their international circuit and how it looks like, right? As into how they get the Team Singapore or the covered athlete status.
Yes, that's right.
I see. So I mean, the things that Anthony was sharing before, definitely time is a constraint, and that's something that athletes in Singapore face as well. But as a person who was able to travel overseas for tournaments and the like, how was that system like? Do you have to spend your own leaves and your own offs when you traveled to, say, was it Europe for fencing?
Yep.
Sorry. Yes.
Your mic seems a little bit cut off.
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally hit the mute key.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely, like Anthony, I really had to spend all my leave, almost actually, I think it was all my leave in the first year for overseas competition. I mean, it helps that your competition's on the weekend, like, and they're nearby. Say in Taiwan, then you fly on Friday night, you fly back on Sunday morning, then you go straight to camp. I did that quite a few times. It was really tiring. So yeah, I really empathize when Anthony says like, yeah, he spends all his leave. It's a really tough time.
Definitely, man.
Was any of the leave refunded to you in any way in terms of offer whatsoever, considering that you were representing the country?
No, they basically they can't reimburse you the leave because they have to answer to their own boss. Your boss has to answer to their own bosses. So they aren't entitled to give you like an extra leave or off based on this So yeah,
Yeah, they give you some time off, right? Some unofficial or unrecorded leave or something like that, right?
the unrecorded leave, officially it's only after you get in the status of the like going for some games, because the way the system works right now is they're very specific. They say that you are in the national team, you need to go for this major competition, and when this major competition is substantial enough for them to allow you to go for this training, then yes, they will put this unrecorded leave for you. If not on a like daily basis, or let's say this regional like just gaming and not some big event, like they usually won't really bother.
When you won the gold medal for the SEA Games, were you considered a national athlete? Sorry, you were definitely considered a national athlete. Were you still serving national service at that point of time?
Okay, it's it, I would say half half, because the qualifying process I was at towards the end of my national service, but during the SEA Games I was already out for like 3 months, I think.
I see. So during the qualifying process itself, right? Um, Now that I do believe SEA Games was considered one of these tournaments that you must attend as a national athlete. Am I correct? It has to be the SEA Games, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, right, as compared to previously when you weren't able, where you had to spend everything by yourself, when you did not qualify as national athlete status yet in your first year, what were things like in the second year, especially the run up in qualifying for the SEA Games itself?
Okay, so compared to the first year, let's say it many things got more clear to me. I started to ask other friends like how they getting time off, how they going for competitions here and there. So I like basically my association wasn't exactly too helpful. They kind of rely on myself to get the unrecorded leave to go for overseas competitions. Um, so the second year was much more smooth sailing for me. I didn't really have to, especially with my like understudy coming in for the when I ORD, I could assign tasks to my understudy, and my boss will feel more assured, basically. So yeah, it was the second year is definitely easier. As I said, it's like a transition period. You have to get used to it. So for me, I guess it was like the first year. The second year, I had more things under my control.
So it's more of being able to adapt to the rigors of training plus national service in the second year that made it easier rather than actually gaining that. Sorry, just another clarification, right? So it was in the second year when you gained that national athlete status, was it?
No, as in I was a national athlete all the way. It's
All the
just
way.
yeah. But the only difference is that you are objectively training for this competition, which is why which is why the government says that yes, we are now allowing you to train. So having the status of national athlete doesn't really qualify you for anything.
I see.
You must have some kind of like you know how it is, like they always must have something to write in or officiate. Yeah.
Ruben, for your players who were able to acquire the name of Team Singapore, was this the same story for them as well?
Well, when we acquired Team Singapore status, it's for representing the country in something that we already qualified for. So we won, let's say, WCG local qualifiers, or we got invited to an invite-only international class tournament with international class teams, So you don't really get your Katong clan signing up for those tournament kind of thing. So yeah, that we can get the branding. From what we've seen, there are several concerns that from the kind of questions we get, you know what I mean? You kind of can tell what a person is worried about by what they ask you about, right? So they always ask about the conduct of our players and the relationship they maintain with their chain of command. You know what I mean? So if you got a guy that like to AWOL a lot, you're probably not going to get any special dispensation. Even if the guy is national athlete, you can forget it, you know. But if the guy is well behaved and trains professionally and has a proper team and proper tournament to go for, then the stars are more likely to align in a way that they'll probably get some leeway.
Now, I'm just gonna bring up quite a famous example when it comes to esports versus national service, and that was, I do believe, at the start of last year, somewhere in about 1 year ago, when First Departure they actually made news and were actually made quite infamous when they were denied the opportunity to participate in a huge Dota tournament. So we saw some of those trends being fulfilled as well, where they had already qualified for a big tournament, but they were not able to attend because the players did not have sufficient leave, and there were some issues on the schooling side as well. But let's just focus on the players, Miracle as well as Momo, who were in national service at a point of time and were not able to procure leave from their respective companies to attend this tournament that they had indeed qualified for. They were the Southeast Asian representatives, and I do believe it was one team from each major region. So Southeast Asia was considered one of the major regions back then, and First Departure was the team to represent Singapore, not just Singapore, but the entire Southeast Asia region, playing in the tournament itself. Now, are you guys familiar with this incident, the First Departure one?
For me, yeah.
Heard of it, yeah.
So now that we've established that yes, there has been this system of like you need to have qualified, and like what Justin said, if you get national athlete status, you're supposed to be training for a very specific tournament. Now it becomes a little bit more tricky for esports in the case because there's not necessarily always going to be a C Games, especially with the dilution of the WCG, with a lot of these publishers taking back the IP rights of the games and running their own tournaments individually itself. So when it comes to looking at this First Departure case, how avoidable was this? Could we have done anything differently? So let's just turn the clock back about 1 year ago, and I'm not sure if SCOGA was involved in this entire situation. Ruben, would like to shed some light on the issue as into if you guys got involved with the entire First Departure case, what was done, and perhaps was there any potential resolution to that, or were there any lessons to learn from that entire incident?
Well, I think I wasn't personally involved in this because it's not really under my portfolio to handle that. But sometimes these cases come pretty late because obviously the invites can come late. I remember sometimes the organizer can let you know 2 weeks, oh, go show up for my tournament, and then you're like, oh my god, and then you start scrambling for all the approval. I think Anthony, you must have experienced this before. So don't worry, it happened to us also. It happened in my time as well. It's not new. So this is one of the areas, but I don't think it's unique to esports, because if I'm not mistaken, in football, right? I remember Home United had a problem calling up one of our players for Asian Championship, AFF Championship or something. We had a problem calling up someone, and so even a big sport like football can get a reason like operational requirement. Your request is denied, right? I think for even esports, it's not like this they're targeting gamers or what. I think that sometimes your operational requirement is like that, then you just can't release the guy.
I mean, back then, I actually did write a small article about it in response to all the outrage about First Departure not getting leave and stuff like that. Because from my anecdotal experience, because I used to play quite a fair bit of this trading card game called Magic the Gathering, and I do believe it's like what Ruben had shared earlier. If you, in general, you've got a good discipline record, there's no way they're going to give you bonus leave and stuff like that. But if you have a good discipline record, you don't create trouble for people in general. You're well behaved in camp, and you're superior, and you're on okay terms with your superiors. If you ask nicely enough, most of the time they will actually give you the green light to go overseas and play in tournaments. And for Magic the Gathering, you didn't even have to qualify for some of these tournaments. You're just like, hi OC, there's this tournament in Japan. I've been practicing for it. I really want to go for it. I need your approval for leave. And even if it's during operation period, sometimes if you're lucky, you may actually get it. So I mean, I was guessing, I was just throwing out some speculation that perhaps there might have been some tension or perhaps some bad blood already established, which was why it was difficult for them to obtain leave. Because even for League of Legends side as well, most of the time, from what we've experienced, players have been able to attend leave to attend major tournaments and finals itself. More often than not, it's the smaller tournaments where we run into issues.
Yeah, or it clashes with some key operational requirement. So now I remember the player, Haris Harun. He couldn't get released, and he's easily one of our best players in the country, no question, this guy. He couldn't get released. So, it happens to even the best of us.
I mean, that's the reality of NS, and I think that's something that we have to look at. But in terms of establishing and finding more recognition as a whole, so I think there's some important things to identify here already, and the landscape is definitely changing of that for the esports side of things. Like previously, for Ruben's example, he brought up it was about getting the branding of being carded as a Singapore athlete of sorts, getting the Team Singapore branding, where it will become a lot easier for you to be able to convince units, yes, I need to attend this tournament overseas, and it becomes a lot easier to coordinate the unit as well. But the reality of today's esports landscape, the WCG is no longer the flagship esports tournament, and in fact, we're looking at a lot of sporadic tournaments all over the place. Dota hosts their own tournament, League of Legends hosts their own tournament, and in fact, it's going to be much more difficult as to consider what's a premier tournament in which you're representing Singapore for. And the second thing is that ImpressioN, I do believe you have played with Vietnamese before in some of these big tournaments as well.
Yep.
So when you compete, let's say on a big stage as well, you need not necessarily be playing with Singaporeans anymore. Like last time, it was the WCG. You played as a country, you participated as a country. It was very clear cut. You were representing Singapore. But now you could be playing with Malaysians, you could be playing with the Vietnamese, you could be playing with Americans, or I don't even know who. I mean, there was one point of time where the Singapore team is not by country demographic, but the effective Singaporean representatives, Team Zenith, they played with this Swedish guy known as Loda, and they played in the TI itself. And I do believe some of the players were in national service as well. And in that kind of situation, if you look at a team as like, you claim to be wanting to have the Team Singapore branding, but there's this guy from Sweden playing for you guys as well. Are you guys still really Team Singapore?
I think because games are so. I mean, basically everything is online now. Your social media, you just look at Facebook, Twitter, everything. It's a different time from before. Like even back in Ruben's, his golden days of Team Titans, right? At that point of time, they actually had a Finnish player with them. I'm not sure which tournament. I mean, this is not something I know, but I think when he was playing, I was still probably playing RuneScape or something. So this is something that's quite debatable. For example, I played in the So Strong Kill the Hill, which was an invite tournament, but I played for Secret back then, which was a Vietnamese-based team, and I wouldn't. For that itself, I had to actually take my own, because it lasted from Thursday to Sunday. If I recall correctly, it was a 4-day tournament. I had to take my own offs on Thursday and Friday just so that I could play in that tournament. I actually even had to ask like some of my campmates to like help me take over my duty for that day, because I actually had duty on Thursday that time during that tournament. So I think the branding of Team Singapore is very, I'll say it's very subjective at the moment, because look at what SCOGA has done. I mean, just like earlier today, the announcement of the Asian. I'm sorry, please name it for me.
Okay. ASEAN Games for Esports.
Yeah, the ASEAN Game for Esports, and from
Just
what
called Aegis. Aegis is easier.
the Aegis, okay. With the the announcement of Aegis, which has I mean, Southeast Asian countries sending representatives of that country to play in a tournament in like the host country, which is Malaysia, and the games are unlisted yet at the moment, as far as I know. With that team, the country team itself becomes more relevant, because you're technically speaking, it's gonna be. I mean, SCOGA is backed by a minister, so I'm pretty sure it's gonna be recognized as like you're actually Team Singapore or Team Malaysia and so on and so forth. And when that team, let's say there's the CS:GO qualifier, right, in Singapore, if the team that wins in Singapore, like for example, if my team wins the qualifier for Singapore, I mean, hypothetically speaking, and will my team Dreamscape be then Team Singapore for the rest of the year, or will it be Dreamscape representing Singapore as Team Singapore to go? I mean, that's even then is quite confusing, because my team right now is Dreamscape. If we were to win the qualifiers and be picked as Team Singapore, we'll be going there as Team Singapore Dreamscape. And afterward, what happens? Because will we drop the name of Team Singapore? Do we have to continue as Team Singapore and no longer Dreamscape? And that's where it actually becomes relevant, whereas a tournament is actually basing stuff off of countries and whatever it is, be it international, I mean like globally, or be it within the Asia region.
Well, you raised a lot of very interesting questions, most of which we don't have the answer yet, because we are still in the very early stages of this. If you ask me, my time is the baby step of esports. Very baby. You guys are now at least crawling, at the minimum crawling, right? We got some world-class gamers winning international prizes, so that's very good. But if you ask me, we are just seeing the tip. It's just the beginning, really. And I don't say that in a
Definitely.
small way. I say it in a big way, in a very big way. I noticed like some of the comments in the chat I'm reading very interesting. Like someone was asking, why is the age only 22 to 23? You know that's the average, right? What's the average age of a peak athlete? That age is a very average thing, because maybe currently the situation is most people after that will go and work and stop playing games. That
Yeah,
could be a
exactly.
reason, right? But if you look at sport, if you let's say watch, I'm a big football fan, so I'm sorry my example keep coming out as football, okay? But I noticed that players can play longer and longer, older and older at a very high level. Now, why is that? Because they're professional for a longer period now. The money is bigger, so they can be professional longer. They can get the best sports scientists. They can figure out, don't drink beer, drink water. Then you think, after 10,000 cups of water versus 10,000 cups of beer, what is your physique going to be like, right? And I'm sure
Yep.
Justin can attest to sport nutrition and proper sleep and all that. These are things I forced on my team back in the day, and people thought I was crazy for doing it. I made my players sleep on time, made my players eat on time, and the reason is I believe that you cannot have an active and healthy mind without an active and healthy body. That's it. It's just a philosophy I believe in, you know. But again, that level of professionalism is hard to enforce and maintain if the players themselves don't have that mindset, and then no one will treat you seriously because it is this horrible vicious cycle, right?
Yep.
People don't care about me, so I don't care about me, then no one cares about me. I think we instead of having that conversation, let's have the conversation of, how can we, again, there's no guarantee, right? So how can we put ourselves in the best position that people look at gamers, not as a bunch of slackers, but look at gamers as, that's awesome. How do we be more like them? That's the part where I am trying to do in SCOGA. We as SCOGA are trying to do. You see? If we can shift that, you may suddenly in 10 years' time, when we have a review and we say, when we're all old men and we come back and we say, wow, remember the conversation we had 10 years ago? And we say, oh, the average age of the gamer today at a professional level is 35. Well, it's not impossible. Why not? Why not? You get more experience, you get smarter. Can't you do things smarter? Can't you win? It's not like you have to run and hold 10 logs or something, This is not a physical activity. Your mind gets smarter and faster. Why not?
Yep.
So there's pros, there's cons, there's different ways to look at this, but here's, if you ask me, there are some questions you ask about, if you win this tournament, a qualifier, are you always going to be Team Singapore or whatever? Okay, I can tell you right now, we don't control the branding of Team Singapore. We don't. Right? And we have no great plans for that just yet. Because actually holding Team Singapore branding, and I can tell you this from my experience as a team coach, there are a lot of responsibilities that come with it. I think Justin also, he shared a little bit earlier, like there are certain rules and things you have to follow.
Yep.
It's not like you can just wear the thing and say, haha, I'm Team Singapore, check me out. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a great honor, but also a responsibility to wear such a tag. It's not just get me out of camp. I think it's a lot more than that. So the key thing is still that when and your very good questions you're raising and asking. First, how do we make sure that people respect us, all of us, whatever our game, and see us as contributing members of society? Because like you mentioned, your teammate there's a doctor there.
Yep.
There's someone who goes to ITE. There are all kinds of walks from life, right? So this is something that we got to help people see, that every gamer is someone's brother, someone's sister, one day will be someone's daddy and mommy, that is the message that I hope we can bring forward. And when we talk about working with the region, right, through ASEAN ties and so on, again, we're not the only ones asking this question. So if you ask me, right, what is your future? Because now you're in NS, you're thinking you've got a few more months to run, right? Let me tell you, your future is bright. Your future is brighter than it has been in the last 10 years. Let me tell you that. You don't want to go back to my time. Let's start there. You should look forward and realize that you are going to get better tomorrow and the day after and the day after. Think about it.
Yep, definitely, man. I think to add on to basically the some of the chat that's going on. I think Omo over here said that beginning of career in esports is 20 plus. I wouldn't say so, because I mean, if I were to bring my teammate in as example, okay, Splashkey, he started playing Counter Strike at 7. He
Mm-hmm.
first went for like World Cyber Games when he was 11. I think that was like 6 years ago. So I think it was '09 or the
Mm.
'08 Cyber Games. I think it was like some of the later, like the very last ones already.
Mm.
And he started playing from a very young age. And when he went to play in the World Cyber Games, even though he didn't actually, do like, how do I put it? Actually, like qualify or actually win anything. I'm not actually too sure on how well he did during the tournament. But it was then that his name was around already. That this guy is a player. He's young. He's super good for his age, and eventually, I mean, Nevin right now, Splashkey Nevin, he's about
Mm-hmm.
18, 17, 19ish at the moment. And in 10 years' time, I believe the experience he has gathered since he was bloody in primary one in Counter Strike would definitely, I mean, contribute to the fact that he's gonna be a better player. I mean, look at great players from the 1.6 era, like Forrest, or players from the Golden Five such as Tess and Neo. Neo right now is still performing as a player, albeit
Mm-hmm.
the fact that he's quite
Mm-hmm.
inconsistent. And I mean, age doesn't. The only problem about age being a factor in esports is the fact that this is Singapore, and that people generally have the ideology that, oh shit, I'm 25, I have to start having a career, I have to start working until I'm 35, I have to get a house by 32, I need like 7 children, I need to make my grandmother happy, stuff like that. And it's a very Asian mindset and mentality, and that gamers generally produce nothing in terms of positive results in life, because you are basically spending and wasting your time away when you could be studying, or you could be working, or you could be doing, contributing to your own life. And it's quite sad, I would say, because
Mm-hmm.
I, for one, have never really thought that way. I think of education as like a piece of paper. I mean, it's not exactly. I do not encourage anybody from thinking that way. Anybody who's younger than me right now, I'm going to turn 20 in like a week, and I do not encourage anybody to think that way. I think studying is really important. Education is really important as well. But for me, it just wasn't the type of lifestyle or the life choice that I went for. I went onto a different walk of life, and that's why I'm actually inside. I'm serving my national service so early, whereas compared to people who actually like maybe go through IT or poly, they start serving at 21, and uh they only ORD like when they are 23, 24, 22, and then they start actually playing. So it's kind of a different idea. It's just that the mentality in Singapore, like what Ruben has mentioned, right? We need to change the mentality and the mindset of gamers in general to every Singaporean, because we have to prove to them that, I mean, for one example, my education is PSLE, and I play games. I'm loud, I'm noisy, I kind of act like a abeng sometimes. And the thing is that when it comes to an actual conversation or actual like debate on what's right and what's wrong, I do know what's right. I do know between right and wrong. I myself had the same mentality that, okay, I'm gonna serve my 2 years, I'm gonna stay out of trouble. That is literally my principle during the moment I stepped onto Tekong Island. I'm gonna stay out of trouble, keep a low profile, and then I'll just finish army, and then I'll start seeing how much time I can actually give to full time, like so-called professional gaming. Because um, at the end of the day, I do think that I need to study and to further improve on my academics, or actually get like a certificate or diploma or whatever lah. And I still haven't had plans yet, because I'm still wondering what the hell I should study, because I have no bloody idea. And so that's the thing. I don't discourage like the mentality that Singaporeans have, but I do encourage the fact that people have to view gamers or esports athletes and in a different manner than what it is currently right now. And I don't think it will change that soon, because I mean, just 2 months ago, back in like 2015, my general ideology of esports booming in Singapore, we have took at least like 5 years. But with what SCOGA is doing, like the ages and everything, I believe in every person's life or every community And in Singapore, the esports community is still very I wouldn't say that it's underdeveloped, but it's not going the right direction yet. Not like how South Korea is doing it, and not like how Europe is doing it, and even like China is getting so much better at like the esports direction because of they sprung forward from Dota. They were like crazy, and they went to in League of Legends. They had crazy teams and crazy players as well. And then even right now in Counter Strike Global Offensive, there's teams surfacing from mainland China that is really really good, and they have like put themselves on the map. So for Singapore to actually do that, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of the players, the different organizations that takes in teams, and even help from the government, like organizations like SCOGA.
Yeah, just two points I'd like to pick up on from what you were sharing. One is about age, right? And I noticed I don't know why Singaporeans are so concerned with age. It's like our national pastime to talk about age and food. These two things. Let me assure you about this, okay? As a coach, when I recruit players, if you're good enough, you're old enough. I don't care how old you are. It is irrelevant. What is relevant is you play well and you represent well. These two things matter to me. And being from a team game, I care about how the team works together as opposed to each individual, who is the carry, who is the follow. No, none of that matters to me. What matters to me is the team must perform in harmony. This is important. So your age is not the most important thing. The next thing is on time. Okay? Now, I know as gamers, we are always on the clock. Never more so than CS. Your life is in 2-minute intervals or less. Right? So
Yep.
let me give some perspective. When we first went abroad, international, to CPL and World Cyber Games, this was very long ago, before it became popular. We went in 01, 02 already. Now, we beat China, all these teams, Korea, all. They are worse than Katong Clan, We make fun of them. Not good at all. The standard was so bad. But in 2 years, they caught up, and in the third year, they surpassed, becoming the best in the region. So whoever is saying that because of NS, then insert your reason for not doing well, I think that maybe you're not practicing the right way. Because the Chinese and the Koreans changed their destiny in that same time. I believe that with the right training, the right attitude, anybody with certain minimum capabilities, like if you got motion sickness, you cannot play FPS, But if you have the minimum capabilities and you have the heart to train, you will do well. I can tell you my best Titan lineup, the one that finally, I consider my best team. They were not the players that were there in the beginning, and they were not in that time when they first started the best of the best. They became the best of the best. They became the best. So you must understand that sometimes you have people that are just naturally gifted, like Monster, or he was natural. 11 years old, he's in the arcade beating people in KOF like free, nothing. Switch to CS, nothing. Switch to Dota, also he whooped people's ass, no problem. He's natural gamer. But I have other gamers, at first they were not very impressive, but they worked at it. They worked really hard. Then they trained. They actually systematically will say, my left swipe is not as good as my right swipe. Then they adjust. They take it methodically. They say, NS, I don't have time. So whatever time I have, I must do the right thing. I cannot just go and anyhow play some scrim. I am going to practice this. I'm going to practice that. I'm going to watch a demo. They are very methodical. What happens? The time is maximized. So can you imagine what they can do after they finish NS? They bring those habits with them. You think how different our perspective of time changed after that? Because I assure you, I had the same thinking before I went in. I was so negative about it. Then I realized that actually it's a matter of getting organized and getting committed. Really, you say you want to be a professional. Well, do you think a professional should be drinking beer in the afternoon? Ask yourself that question. And I'm not saying anyone here is, but you get what I mean. The professionalism must come from you. When you behave the right way, you watch good things come your way.
Yeah, I think it's up to every individual's. It's up to their own responsibility to actually act the way that they should. Not act, or in fact, like to represent themselves as a positive person. And I think that's actually quite important. Like for me myself, right? NS wasn't that like I said lah. BMT was like a great time of my life, and I learned a lot from BMT. Basic military training. I was a samurai, and I'm still a proud samurai. I still have the shirt, hanged out in my closet, and like I love to wear out because I want people to see that I was proud of the company. And I learned a lot about regimentation. Learned a lot about discipline, teamwork, just plenty of things. How one person can screw up entire platoon, how one person can save it as well at the same time, and how basically a lot of things that actually applies to games, which is like just teamwork and knowing each other, having the bond with you there. And
Yeah.
but for me, that may be the case, but there are people who have a more negative outlook in terms of national service. Like some may go in with like the most negative possible ideology of army. They might think, "Oh, I'm gonna go in and possibly die," and they just go and they just suffer throughout that 2 years that they're serving the army. Like what Justin mentioned, like some of his friends that were national athletes end up quitting because they were just like, wow, okay, no, I'm screwed. There's no way I can do this anymore. But I believe that having a positive mindset, like being responsible for yourselves in terms of the amount of time you have, like the amount of time that I spend on training, and it's not training because I just want to play. It's training because I want to win. And people who are actually in the army have to have this type of mindset, whereas nothing, technically speaking, nothing is impossible. I mean, the fact that you were born in Singapore, you have to serve national service and use up 24 months of your life is already something that is seen as quite impossible in other parts of the Mother Earth. So the mindset and the responsibilities and basically everything and the mentality that you serve the army with will definitely affect how you end up as a person, not just as a player, not just as a professional athlete or professional esports or game player. It will affect you as a person. So that's actually something that's to take note of as well, I feel.
Justin, do you concur with the sentiment that there are benefits of national service even to regular athletes?
I feel that there is definitely some benefit. Some people do individual sports. There isn't much of a sort of a team building or this kind of togetherness feel that you get from army, or maybe it all really depends. Like NS, it's a forced discipline, right? But in sports in general, you have discipline in this, but you don't have discipline in that. It's very selective. So yeah, I feel that army is really good for that.
Well, for me, when I look at national service, right, I actually feel that when people always criticize national service, I usually am a very staunch defender of the national service thing in Singapore. Whether people buy into the idea of we need to defend against external threats, that's not so much of what I buy into. But I think it's a very valuable 2 years of education for all Singaporean males out there. And even for gamers, I feel that national service does contribute in a very unique way, because I feel that especially in the mobile realm, the more people look into it, the more people start to realize the value of shot calling, the more people start to realize the value of in-game leaders. And ever since the days of the Singapore Sentinels, that was 4 years ago, people have been saying that the Singaporean teams have lacked a very clear, decisive in-game leader for MOBAs in general. And I actually feel that we actually need this generation of players who are still waiting to enlist into national service. Go inside, please, one of you, go into OCS or something, learn some leadership skills, come out and step up to become that in-game leader that we are really needing in the mobile scene for Singapore, be it for Dota, for League, or whatsoever. Because too long I keep hearing this excuse of like, in Singapore, yeah, we don't really have a shot caller, that's why we made the wrong decisions when it came to this tournament. We lost over there because we didn't know how to make the right decisions. And you can pin it down to people not knowing how to take responsibility, people not being assertive enough and stuff like that. And I think that national service actually can contribute in such a way. Go in there, learn how to work, manage your team, work together as a team, even just simply by being there, learning how to take instructions, and sometimes learning that life is sometimes it's absurd, it's unfair, can go a very long way to building you as a character and as a person in game as well.
Yeah, well, it's not just that. When you mentioned that leadership vacuum, if you will, that's a very interesting point. We faced the same issue all those years ago, and we actually kind of figured out where it came from. It's the fear of failure. See, we have a Singaporean mindset that we must be world class. We cannot be second best. Let's agree. Our culture is such. We got the train, we must have the best train in the world. We got airport, must have the best airport in the world. So
We wanna have a fine, we must have the best fine in the world.
the best part, so when
No chewing gum, my friends.
so when you, I mean, you understand this psyche lah. I mean, we have to. We're so small, right? So in the same way, when the leader needs to make a choice, what all gamers need to understand, and this is something I used to train my players in. A lot of people assume we play in front of the computer all the time. Actually, no. 70 to 80% of our time is on maps, paperwork. We do what is called shadow play, and we do exercises, thought exercises. Because we assume that you already at a certain level of aim. What you need is a thinking, and I always tell them this: every strategy must have a weak point, and you must know what the weak point is. And if there's no weak point in your strategy, that means your strategy cannot beat any other strategy because it's too neutral. There's no point of attack, and therefore there's no point of weakness. It's always like that. A good strategy will have a very strong point of attack and a part that is very weak, and it's an accepted part that you know that it's okay. I'm just going to do this and bash the guy, and that's how you make choices. You make trade-offs.
Yep.
Actually. You don't actually have a pao ka liao tactic. That doesn't actually work. Okay.
Yeah. If
So
there's rewards,
Ah,
there's
yes.
high risk as well at the same time.
so you are making those choices basically, because to make no choice, to choose the so-called the safe option, the most stable option, that's how you get killed. You get what I mean? It's like camping in so-called the safe spot, then 5 HE grenade fly in at you, then you die lah. So you get what I mean, right? You don't pick
Yeah,
the safe spot. That's not the place to play. So in the same way, when we talk about high level play, Singapore in general, our problem is we are scared to make a mistake. We're scared of failure. We're scared our teammates scold us. These are the parts where I felt NS helped us the most, because for me personally, I speak from personal experience. Before I went in, my group of friends are mainly maybe 1-2 token Indian Chinese, the rest Indian or Malay, and then the rest are Chinese. When I went in, I got a much fuller view of the diversity in our society. Right? I met people who were very poor, people who were very wealthy, rich man's son, all these kind of people. So I got a very interesting look at Singapore society in a cross-sectional view, right? And you learn that everybody has different things about them. Something that they're good at, something that they really are crap at. And then you start to figure out, you know what? We can either pick on their faults all day long, or we can just utilize their strength, and then as a team, all of us be strong. We use our strengths. And I felt NS helped me wrap my mind around that I can scold the guy for always being late, or I can find a way to get him to a place on time. Choice is up to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's quite clear that there are definitely some benefits of having national service. In terms of the education experience as well, it definitely hinders the time, but it can actually grow us in a very unique way. I mean, talking about turning weaknesses into strengths, perhaps this might actually be one advantage that we have as Singaporeans that a lot of other countries do not have. The fact that we have all these opportunities to go through such training and learn and understand things about the game, because all the time in the League of Legends community you hear this on Reddit, you hear people talking about lack of teamwork, lack of leadership issues, and they don't really have the opportunities to learn such things. And in Singapore, I think national service for our players might be one way that we can pick up on such soft skills. In fact, that's what I'm going to call it.
I think for something like this, right, I probably have an example or story to share,
Okay.
which was back in 2014, right? I actually enlisted in November 7, 2014. Before that, October 2014, I went overseas with my team back then, which was BF NAP, to actually participate in a land qualifier in Kuala Lumpur, and that was for the BenQ CS:GO Cup, and we actually managed to qualify, but we qualified only as the second seed because we couldn't play throughout the best of 3, because we had to actually catch our coach back into Singapore, because if we didn't, one of my players would have actually missed his first day of internship while he was in poly. So when we actually qualified, the tournament itself, the finals, right, it was actually I think November 28th, which was my second book out. And I've actually managed to go overseas to Malaysia, for to Kuala Lumpur to play in the offline, the grand, so-called the finals of the after the qualifiers, basically everything. And when I went over there to Malaysia, right, on my team, for some reason I played the best individually, And then I asked my team, okay, because while I was in Tekong, it was really hard for me to actually contact with them. I mean, I had limited amount of battery every week for my phone, and that battery is actually spent on looking on at hltv.org, which is a website for like all the news on almost like all the news on Counter Strike. And I realized one thing when I was gone was the fact that throughout the so-called like 3 weeks that I went into the army and then went over to Malaysia, my first after confinement week, my first book out. Okay, we trained on that Saturday and Sunday, and in the afternoon, and then I booked in again. And then when I booked out for the second time, we went over to Malaysia, and when we were in Malaysia, I played the best, and I asked them why, what happened, what is going on at, what went wrong. We lost basically in Counter Strike is a MR15, which is a match round 15, like first to 16 wins. So you can think of it as like best of 15, like, or best of 30. My terms are a bit screwed up now, pardon me for that. But the first team to get to 16 rounds wins the map. And we lost to teams that we were supposed to win by a much bigger margin by like one round. We lost to teams because we only got 14, they got 16. I asked them what was wrong, and they told me that they didn't actually train. They lacked training. They weren't confident in their aim. They weren't confident in their strats. They weren't confident in the mechanics of the game. They just weren't landing shots as well. And that shouldn't be something that's happening. And I was the team captain back then. So without me coordinating the trainings and without me actually being there for the trainings during the weekdays, my team basically fought, and it just went. It was a freaking mess, and we just like broke into like pieces and shambles and shit. And that's where I think what you mentioned just now, Jensen, about the so-called excuse of in-game caller or bad decision making by the team leader and such. I don't think that it's not a so-called, I think, feasible excuse. I think it's actually quite true, but it's just that I believe that throughout NS, or at least throughout the basic military training for people who are actually combat fit or support combat fit, they actually learn a lot in terms of being a captain. Like, I only recently joined Dreamscape. I think the longest player that has been in Dreamscape was Nevin. I spoke to him personally. I told him, because Nevin has always been like a very good player, and previously he has had the burden of having to play at his best on every map to for the team to actually be able to do very well and win against like the top tier teams in Asia. But now that I actually spoke to Nevin, with my much broader understanding ever since I enlisted in the army, I told him that you have players who are capable of doing what you are doing right now. You don't have to burden it all on yourself. You can actually shoulder some of it to us and let us help us into becoming a better team, and to aim for a top spot in Asia, which is what we're going for right now. And I feel that it's a very possible thing to do. You just have to have the correct direction, the correct mentality, the correct mindset towards working to be the very best in Asia, and that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah, and you got to have good practice, because if you have bad practice, all you become good at is doing the bad stuff.
Yep, definitely. And Counter Strike, I mean, in Counter Strike, the one thing that has always rung true, regardless of the version of it, regardless of how long it was ago, is the fact that practice will definitely be able to make perfect. Because, like what Ruben mentioned just now about shadow playing, which is basically, I think the new term for it is dry running, which is basically coming up with strategies, different type of, you can think of it as a team compositions in League of Legends, right? Whereas if, like, at least from when I was playing competitively, if there was a Vayne, you're gonna have to protect the Vayne, because the Vayne is definitely gonna storm during the late game. And in CS it's different, because 5 of the players are 5 exact. They spawn off with 5 exact same things. Is what you buy, how you're going to support each other during a strategy. There's no such thing as a perfect strategy, like what Ruben mentioned, because if you have 1 to 10, right, you can't cover 1 to 10. But what you
No.
can do is making sure that if 9, 10, 8, 9, and 10 is going to be weakness, you make sure that 8, 9, and 10 is covered by someone like one of the players on the team. And that's where strategies come out. There's also strategies to fake, there's strategies to pull them into your crosshair, into putting your opponent in your places you want them to be and making sure that they play your game. So in the sense, practice is very important. And I mean, practice is important. It's just how you're going to do it, how you're going to manage it with the amount of time constraints you have. It's not just national service, in Singapore. You have work, you have studies. It's everything about the Singaporean lifestyle that
Family,
is
don't
really
forget
quite taxing.
family
Yeah,
and,
family
and
as
loved
well.
ones. That's important, Don't forget
Yeah,
those.
for example, I'm sacrificing my family time, my social life to
Mm-hmm.
actually become the best at this game. And I find that I told my family, I spoke to them, like I told them in tears, I love each and every one of you, and they're very supportive of what I'm doing. And I told them I love each and every one of you. I know that I'm not spending as much time with you guys as a family, and I appreciate all the support that they gave to me, and that just I told them to bear with me for this period of time while I'm in national service and while I'm trying to commit to the game, trying to make the best out of myself while I'm serving national service and try to accomplish something, because esports or games actually are my passion. Being the best is something I want to be, and this is just something that we have to. I mean, it's in a sense you could say that it's just an exchange, or I mean, sacrifices have to be made if you want to achieve something. And right now, I'm sacrificing my family and my time with my friends. It's just the mentality that you have while you're doing so, because I could be sacrificing my family time to achieve nothing and go nowhere, and that's not something I want to do, because it's just I'll practically, I mean, I will literally be wasting my own time lah. So people have to get that direction right when training. And I mean, the in-game leader stuff for League of Legends, I used to do shot calling, but I don't know how it works now. I don't know how the game is. I totally lost touch with it. And I mean, the only mode I ever play on League of Legends now is all random or mid, which is Aram. It's just purely for casual fun. And I think to improve esports in general for Singapore, be it Counter Strike, be it League of Legends, be it Dota, or any other game. I mean, there was a NSF World of Tanks championship like in like 2012 or 2013. I saw the poster that's still actually like stuck onto my locker room in camp. And so it's just how players are going to practice, what sort of mindset they have, what sort of mentality they have during national service. That's definitely going to help them. You could go through army feeling like nothing in this world is fair. You could feel like God himself is standing beside you, tickling your shoulders or some shit. But what you do with what you have is what you will make. Is what you make of it. Is that will correspond to what you achieve lah. Basically, is what I feel lah.
Okay, we've got one question from the audience over there in chat is asking how far into the future will we have to wait for Singapore to have an organization willing to sponsor a team with a reasonable / sustainable salary? My Republic had a vision for it, but the plan fell through. Does anybody want to take the question?
I think Ruben is more suitable for this.
Yeah, I can, but I would frame it from another perspective. Okay, so typically organizations use the word sponsor, right?
Yes.
So sponsor, you got to understand, is a business transaction first. Let's just put a few things so that everyone gets where we're on the same page. A sponsor wants something out of this, you want something out of this. So it's a business deal. Okay? So in the first place, you got to ask who has the budget first to play this game. And you need to realize that while you may say, wow, but Intel is in Singapore, all these guys also are in Singapore. Okay, here's the reality. I'll share with you my experience from my time. When I wrote to Intel, my team was sponsored by Intel, Singtel, Razer, Nvidia, Shuttle, all these guys sponsored my team. All our gear, all completely done, but we were not paid to play. We were paid to play in the end, oddly enough, by Sony Entertainment, because of the Championship Gaming Series in the US. You see, not Singapore budget. So every organization in Singapore, they have a budget that's given to them for marketing or whatever. Sponsorship tends to fall under marketing or PR. One of these areas will be their budget. Now, you must think, Singapore population, let's say we take 6.9 million for fun, okay? Malaysia's population, 80 mil. Vietnam, 80 mil, right? Indonesia, 100 over mil. Who do you think has the budget to play this game? Intel Singapore or Intel Indonesia? Right? So in the end, what happened is Intel Singapore said, but you know what? Intel is changing the strategy. That was the time they were moving from Pentium 4 to core processor. They said they have a new strategy called Game On, and the strategy was every continent in the world must have 2 Intel teams. So ended up, we talked to Intel China, and Intel China flew down to Singapore, said, Rueben, we got no contract for you, but how about this? We shake hands, and then I do my part of the deal, you do your part of the deal, and if nobody complains, we keep doing it. I said, okay, sounds good. In 1 week, I had 8 processors and top-of-the-line motherboards flown into my house on FedEx. I said, I want team shirts. I want my home base, which was in Katong. I said, I want my home base to have new machines, everything. They said, done. Consider it all done. Give us 1 month. Everything got changed. So if you only think Singapore, your budget is only for Singapore, which is very, very small. So what was our plus point? Why did Intel endorse us and WMD, which was China best national team at the time? The reason was this. Our lineup was very multiracial. We had 1 Malay, 1 Indian, 2 Chinese, and then you had team coach like me, Eurasian, very multiracial. So what we had? Regional appeal. And we were good lah, we didn't suck, right? That's another part lah. So what used to actually upset a lot of players who were not on our lineup was, how come every time we lose a tournament, we gain a sponsor? The answer is this: sponsorship has nothing to do necessarily with your win or loss ratio. It has to do with what you represent and the value you bring the organization. So if you bring your organization regional or global value, then the budget for you becomes regional or global, doesn't it? So if you want to be paid to play comparable to, let's say, the Swedish or overseas players, then you got to think, how do I increase my appeal and visibility to that level? How do I make myself that valuable and indispensable that now I'm not only sponsored by computer brands, I'm sponsored by lifestyle brands. Levi's wants me, Coke wants me. Now that was beyond my scope, because my aim in when I was coaching, I only had one vision. Can I get my team paid to play? And once I got them contracts, I was, okay, that's it. I'm going to the States to study. Goodbye, guys.
So just as kind of a follow-up to that, I mean, the topic's still about, the main topic was supposed to be on national service and esports. So earlier we talked about the Singapore Sports Association being the main body that is recognized by the government of sorts, who is able to give the Team Singapore branding of sorts. And we see in Korea, I'm not sure if there's one in China, there's this CASPA organization who is sort of the figurehead, they're not just the figurehead, they are the authority on esports in the country itself. And when it comes to negotiating terms of players going to national service and the stuff, they are the authority figure of sorts. SCOGA has been, from my understanding, they have been filling that role within Singapore itself. They have been helping players out ever here and then. But will we ever see SCOGA step up to become an authority on esports in Singapore itself? Okay,
by authority, you see, authority, you can either take it or it can be conferred upon you. If you talk about government recognized authority, that is really out of our place to say, right? It's really beyond my pay grade. But in terms of, can we rely on authority to be entrusted to us by the gamers? We hope to win gamers over to realize that we are a bunch of guys just like you. We are a bit older, quite a bit older, but we've been through your pain. Trust us. Every time we get a rejection letter, let me tell you, we feel upset too. Let me assure you on that. Every time our boys go overseas and get smacked in the butt, we also feel the pain. We take the pain with you. Okay? And for us, what we feel that matters the most is, don't fight among each other, don't fight among gamers. Let us band together and show the world and our government also that, you know what, we can be positive, we can create good things, and trust us with the authority. And you know what, I have a feeling a new Singapore is coming. That's my feel. I feel a new Singapore is coming. You look at the progress we're making with our friends in Malaysia, right? Esports Malaysia. Look at how fast they did theirs. They got theirs going. So now the question is, we can go to our government and we can show, look, we are not the only ones. The water is nice and warm. Join us, right? We can show that. So it is our hope that we can get to that level where instead of me saying I'm the boss of you, we say, you know, trust us. Trust us to take you to the promised land, and we'll do our best every step of the way.
That's definitely something quite interesting in it. But Back to the topic. So I'm trying to steer this back due to conversation about national service. We kind of got detracted from that a little bit, but I mean this was kind of a hypothetical, and this is something to think about. Like last time, it was very clear like what was the number of games, the number of big title games out there where one could kind of claim to be a competitive gamer in were much smaller as compared to what we see right now in the current scenario. So I mean, in the pre-session, you did say that. Oh, never mind. I'll actually let you do the storytelling in this case. But basically, the number of games previously where people would actually try to go pro at, or people would put in lots of time and effort into in the past, is significantly much smaller as compared to the gaming market nowadays. Now, with esports industry booming, there's this kind of a debate of what's exactly an esport and what should be considered a game. I mean, even amongst the top echelons of, like, some people say that StarCraft Brew War is the only true esport, everything else is shit compared to that. And then if you have a wider perspective, some people, I mean, until today, there's still some people who argue that Hearthstone is not a real esport. That's definitely up. That's some debate that I see all the time whenever there's somebody who, or whenever like TSM picks up a new Hearthstone player or whatsoever. So in this kind of scenario, right, when it comes to getting people recognized for esports, so let's not forget in terms of, say, getting people that legitimacy of sorts for them to say that, yeah, I need a little bit of time here for training, I need a little bit of time to go overseas and the like. What exactly counts as a game? What exactly counts as a esport in this case? Does Minecraft count as an esport? Does, say, I don't know, maybe one day some guy comes up to you and says, I really want to play competitive Minecraft, Minecraft or Minesweeper, or these kind of like lesser known games who have an arguably smaller international scene, and then they try to get exemptions from national service or go up to the OC and come to SCOGA, or maybe they come to SCOGA and say that, yeah, we need a letter over here to write into our OC to play Minecraft overseas or something.
Yeah, well, okay, that's a really big bag of snakes. So trying to lay them out straight is very challenging. So first, nobody in the world has the real authority to say mine is an esport, yours isn't. I remember when we were meeting people in the early days, someone had, he asked me in this way that was very, I felt it was quite rude, but he asked, no, so you're saying because two people are clicking their mice, this is called a sport? So, okay, let me ask you, if let's say two people decide to take some cups and fill up a bucket of water, and whoever fills up the bucket of water first, is that a sport? He asked me this question. So I, of course, was thinking about it and said, then what is chess? Or what is shooting? How do you judge what is a sport or not? And it was a tough question, but I didn't like the way the person put it. So for us, right, in SCOGA, the way we approach what is an esport, right, we look at it not just from the game, right? It's not just from the game number of sales or the number of eyeballs it gets on an average or number of active players. I think these are great for a game company. You want to decide what's the next great game you're going to make? Okay, that's useful stats for you. But from a sport perspective, does this really guide us? No, not really. When we look at what we want to recognize, or even not recognize, let's put it this way: we want to recommend someone to get NS, deferment or whatnot, right? We will look at it from the perspective of who is this guy? What does he represent to the game, to his community, to Singapore, right? And we consider it from a whole bunch of factors, not just one or two things. Because it is really unfair. If we try to go full quantitative on this and just say there's a set of rules, we just follow yes, no, I can tell you a lot of gamers will be eliminated just like that. You may not believe it, we actually have world-class Tetris player in Singapore. We have world champion Street Fighter player in Singapore. Again, who are we to say his game is good, the other game not good? No, we don't do it that way. For us, we look at it from, okay, is it in a national interest to support this guy? What is this person doing? What is the game, the level of tournament, or the contribution to the community? Because again, if we only go on the basis that only the best must go, then the issue is, then only the best will keep taking. Then you end up with no community. You just end up with one guy, and then the rest are nothing. They're not going to get a chance. They're not going to do anything. It's very sad. It will be a very sad state of affairs. So wherever possible, we try to look at it from multi-factors, and then we consider how we want to assist. What's the best way to help?
Yeah, I agree. Like, for example, like right now, what my personal view on it is our government is it's kind of like we get the feeling that they are a bit short-sighted on their thinking. Like we have people like Joseph Isaac Schooling getting deferment and all that. You know, these there are only a few of them, you know, and we already know that these people are established in their own sport. So I think the real issue now is how do we convince the government to allow us to cultivate our athletes and gamers. I think this is one part they have yet to understand fully, because themselves not being really an expert, you know, our ministers aren't really like say gone through this whole athlete path or gamer path. It's more on like they just can't understand from our perspective, and I think that's what's really important right now is to try to get the government to understand that.
Are there examples of sports or sports people, who are fairly decent in their craft or whatsoever it is, but they are not recognized by the SSA or like these government schemes towards sports?
I think it's this is another can of worms. I mean, like in Singapore, I say like every sport, right? We have the main sports body. This is like Sport Singapore. Team Singapore is actually not really a sort of organization. It's more of like a body of people. It's a community. So under Sport Singapore, we branch out into individual sport associations. You know, we have our tennis association, we have the football association, fencing association. So it really branches out into another association helping these bunch of athletes, which I find that in cyber gaming I would assume will be very, very tough because there's really just too many games right now. So yeah, I do think it's just the whole idea of the government being more flexible in thinking that hey, we have a bunch of people who we can help to grow the future with and maybe the country's future. So yeah, that's my point of view.
For me, right, I personally think that esports is it's more of a community, I would say. Like if you were to look at the amount of games that are out there at this moment, I would say that esports is just basically a community of people that find that the mechanical aspect of a certain game, how long it takes to get good at a certain game, how difficult that is to achieve that level, and that's where the competitiveness comes in. That's where it's actually like a sport per se, because how much time you put into whatever you're doing, how good you get at it, and how you use that to compete against another another athlete or another player is an entirely different thing. Like what the example that Ruben got from like that, which in my opinion feel the really rude guy, right, about
Yeah,
the bucket of waters and crap.
yeah.
Anybody could do that, but where is the mechanical aspect of it? Where is the actual competitiveness of it? I mean, nobody would go around like, I bet if you $5, I can fill this bucket faster than you, and nobody will actually find the like. There's nothing of it. Yeah, I mean, you could say that the guy spends like 10 hours a day filling buckets of water with this cup, and he's damn good at it. But there's no mechanical aspect to it, and it's just he basically comes down to the fact that he's just doing something really good. I mean, some people have nice handwriting. Is there a contest of hand people with like nice handwriting? I mean, in my own knowledge, I do not know of such a
No, no,
contest.
they do. They have such a contest. You know, they
Then
really do.
it's obviously out of my league. Then I have no idea because my handwriting is shit in both Mandarin and English, and that is just starting. That is just out
But
of
that doesn't make it
out
a
of the
sport.
world,
You
mate.
see.
Yeah, it's not a sport. It's a competition.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The sport is how much you put into it. Like how like even in something like boxing, right? A southpaw is the worst enemy of any type of boxer because he's left-handed and he boxes differently. But what can you come up with in yourself, or whatever stratagems or whatever tactics that you have to deal with that specific southpaw? Because I'm pretty sure every boxer has their own individual style. Some are heavy hitters, some are outboxers, infighters, outboxing. It's all sorts of different things, and mixed martial arts can can it be considered a sport? That's also one thing, and I mean, generally speaking, it more or less is already because of how
Mhm.
how the people look at it. It's just how people look at it that makes it a sport. But whether whether this game is a esport title and whether that game is another esport title, that's entirely debatable by the people who are involved in esports themselves, which is the community and the people and the players and the viewers. Like a lot of my League of Legends friends from like 3-4 years ago started watching CS:GO because CS:GO was so entertaining. I mean, like
Yeah.
what Ruben mentioned, your life is in the intervals of 2 minutes or less, and anything could happen within that period of time. There were
Yeah.
insane things that happened. There were things that happened that is mechanic. There is like from the hard work and the practice of individual players that makes them so mechanically skilled. Like recently, Rain did killed 5 people with 20 bullets. Actually more than 20 because he actually put out his pistol. But it's the hard work and the practice, how much time he put into the game, the aspect of the mechanics in that game itself that helped him make that big play. And that's where I feel something can be considered a sport. It's just how it's one thing is how people look at it. The other thing is how much effort has to be put into it to actually become good at it. And also, I mean, this thing you can probably host another podcast about this particular topic lah.
What,
But
what is
my
a sport and
opinion-
what is not a sport?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
in my opinion, esports is a community. Whether or not the game is an esport title is entirely debatable, and but there are definitely some basic fundamentals to it, like certain foundations to it, like the mechanical aspects of things, the muscle memory, how much practice they put, how Ruben mentioned, a player feels that he can swipe left better than he can swipe right. I feel that too. When I swipe right, it's so much more comfortable, but when I swipe left, it feels kind of awkward.
You
And
ever
I-
hit your keyboard? You ever swipe and hit your own
yeah,
keyboard
you,
and get
you hit your
yeah.
keyboard,
You see?
you feel
you see?
so much pain in your pockets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
yeah.
much pain when you're doing the game. I mean, if for example, I had no knowledge whatsoever of fencing. I know it's really, I think it's a really anxious sport to me because
Yeah, just think boxing. It's very similar to boxing.
yeah, I'm like okay, if a guy who is a counter specialist in boxing fights he specializes against infighters who hit hard, and he does a outboxing player style. That's a conflict of mechanical play, and that's where it's actually a sport because you're pitting whatever you know against whatever another person knows.
Wait, let me stop you there. Then there's a counter argument to this where we look at a sport like swimming. Then where does that come in? Is you're just racing against the time
Or golf.
timer that's on.
Golf.
See.
Golf.
I mean, there's a question in the audience like, now that you guys have brought up golf and swimming as sports, penmanship is something you brought up earlier. What's stopping penmanship from becoming a sport?
Okay, that's probably for another.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I mean, like, okay, put it this way, right? For a lot of people, they like to degrade gaming to it's just button mashing or it's just clicking a mouse. Yeah, people like to say these things, and for me, there's this old joke on the internet. It goes like this. It says Henry Ford, he was making his first car and he couldn't get it to work, so he called Nikola Tesla and says, can you figure out what's wrong with the engine? So Tesla, opens up the car and he says, get me a hammer. And he takes it and he really whacks the engine real hard and then suddenly everything works. And Ford says, I must pay you. And Tesla says, no charge. He says, no, I got to pay you. So Nikola Tesla sends him a bill for $10,000, which today it's like 10 million or something, right? And so Ford goes, why is it $10,000? Can you give me an itemized breakdown of the cost? You just took a hammer and hit it. So you know what Tesla did? He said, $1 for swinging the hammer, $9,999 for knowing where and when to swing it. Hello?
Yep.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, so basically, you can say that gaming is about swiping a mouse, clicking a button. You can say, fencing is, just swing the sword around. What? Yeah, but knowing when and where to do it, that's all the difference in the world.
I think that was the point I was trying to get through, but I
Yeah.
couldn't do it with boxing because I don't have enough knowledge of boxing. lah.
Yeah, but it comes down to that. So it's easy for people to criticize and say when they don't understand or don't go through what's going on. Whereas, I mean, like for most of us, I think I think everyone in this chat at least has the brain of a sports person. Just because you don't play a sport anymore doesn't mean you're not a sportsman. Your brain works that way. You understand the idea of how to beat someone or beat nature for that matter. Like golf is about you versus nature. Swimming is you versus nature. Tennis is you versus the other person. Fencing is man on man. So there are differences in the sport. That's all.
Yeah. I
So-
think the mentality of sports person.
So
I
from
once had my mum cross the road, right? And I told her it looked like it was really dangerous, and then she told me she's an athlete. So I mean that's quite interesting, like in itself. It's just how we are nurtured, I guess, as athletes of different manners and sports.
So from what I know from an academic standpoint is that a sport has to be embodied. So usually it needs to be embodied in a certain way in terms of a test of strength, test of dexterity, or some form of test in which it's embodied in a certain way. And usually people use this argument to discount games such as chess or esports as being real sports.
Yeah.
But in the case of esports, we kind of cheat. We put the E letter in front of it and say, "Yup, it's online now. It's embodied electronically, and it's about clicking and swiping the mouse in the right way." It's still a test of dexterity, it's still a test of mental agility of sorts.
Yeah. Well, don't forget the races. Don't forget things like curling. I mean, they require a certain degree of good hand-eye coordination, strategy, thinking, and yes, you physically have to be at the right state.
Okay, so one thing that I wanted to ask, like Justin brought a very interesting point about how Team Singapore is a body of people that's further broken down to lots of various associations by themselves, which is represented by the single sports in that case. In Singapore itself, there's SCOGA and then there's Garena. Garena is very specific. They settle and they help people when it comes to Garena published games. So League of Legends, Alliance of Valence Arms, Blackshot previously, FIFA Online, and anything else is none of their business. But from the perspective of the SCOGA Vice President, do you see potential conflicts of interest happening?
No, not at all. Not at all. For us, as long as someone steps up to do the right thing for us as gamers, I don't see a need to pick and choose. I think that Garena, obviously, between Garena and us, Garena has a vested interest to support the gamers who play their games, right? There is a vested interest for them to do it. For us, if they are doing it and they are in a position, then good for them. But if they are not, then we have to do our job too. So we don't really have to make this about A versus B. It's about what's good for gamers.
But do you see a potential situation where A versus B might occur? Because now it's like some of these games, they tend to be very competitive, especially when it comes to the allocation of resources within a certain demographic. So how much goes to certain people is like simple things like if you go to MLG, you go to IPL, there's either Dota or LoL. You don't see both happening at the same place simply because it's like you wouldn't pay money, give your sponsor people, and then have them bring in your competitors' products. Do you see a situation where, let's say, one day Blizzard might come up to you and say that, okay, for SCOGA, we are going to give you this package over here that you guys can use to help out gamers in Singapore. It's a growth program. We'll fly in talent and everything. We will even create a stadium or something where people can train and do their own things as well. And we're going to request your assistance in getting some of these things done. It sounds a fantastic plan for Singapore. But then the catch comes where they say that, okay, but it can only be Blizzard games or non-competing games. So you can only do Hearthstone, and so it basically forces you into a situation where you are forced to alienate other people. Do you ever see such a situation happening?
Okay, so first, let's just be clear. This is a hypothetical situation.
Yeah, it's hypothetical, entirely hypothetical.
So first, the way we cut deals is not like this. We don't actually cut this kind of deals. But let's say Blizzard creates an arena of their own.
Mhm.
Let's say they create an arena of their own, and then they come to us and say, as long as it's my games, you guys can come and use it for free. We would not be opposed to that. Because it's their place, it's their right to choose one. Don't you think?
Yeah, definitely.
But we are not going to do a deal where I own the place and he's telling me what to do with it. You see the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is important. That's why when we run, for example, Campus Game Fest,
Okay.
we have a request for proposal. We ask communities to step up and propose the games they want and how to run it. I think Anthony, you may have heard of this before because of how we did CGF with BF Nut and all that, right? You may have and Insidious and all that. So have you ever seen us favor anyone? We don't work that way. Our way is if you got people willing to step up to run things and make it happen for your community, we would love to support you. So like you can see the Asterix ladies, they are so committed to organizing good events and so on. You see them organizing the Galaxy girls also, they step up and all that. So this is what we try to do. We don't see it as we need to pick and choose. It's really quite a big space and we are just at the infancy level, Maybe perhaps if there are individual companies that they want to set the rules that we don't allow something else in here, well, that's their choice because they own the property, that's their right. But for us, we don't really cut deals that way.
Yeah, I don't feel that it will be such a problem. I mean, when you have such events, it's similar with sport. I think everyone wants to go for a common goal.
Yeah.
Like they want to promote the sport or they want to showcase their best athletes or gamers in this sense. I mean, it's the same in the last SEA Games. I believe my friend from wrestling was telling me that they basically every time we have like these kind of games, they allocate the number of athletes they allow to participate. So the host country gets to select which games they wanna have. So like for example, I think the SEA Games, Singapore favored squash over wrestling because basically our squash is I guess in the region better than wrestling. But I don't see like any. I mean, of course there's a bit of like salty remarks somewhere in there, but I think in the end it's all down to the spirit of hosting it. It's not really about like these kind of small little things in the end. Yeah.
And I think the upcoming SEA Games, the host Malaysia, I think, mentioned that they may be dropping up to 5 games, right? They just recently announced. They didn't say what games they were, but they were announced after Chinese New Year,
Yeah, I mean it's very political, and I don't want to get into that, but yeah.
Absolutely. No, but I mean like it's not unusual, but from SCOGA standpoint, we don't really feel the need to pick and choose this sort of thing. If there's a community that's willing to come and back the event and support the event and conduct themselves in a good way, why would we stand in the way?
So if in this case a company comes up to you with a non-compete clause willing to sponsor your event, and then your answer to them would be simply no, on the basis that this is my event, you don't tell me how you run it.
There's actually it really depends. There's a lot of variables that go into what type. Is it commercial event? Is it a community event? You see, it depends, right?
I see.
It really
so
depends.
It's the context.
Yeah, because I mean, if it's a community event where we open it to every community to come and represent your community, play your game, show people your game, then why would we allow a non-complete? It doesn't make sense. It goes against the whole point of it, right? But if let's say it's this is BlizzCon Singapore, then come on, you kind of know the non-compete is going to be in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question that just came in. If you all had the authority, what would one thing you would modify about the current NS system to improve the situation for your respective communities, be it sports or esports?
I think that's a question. That's a question for the communities, right, to answer.
Well, Anthony, you wanna answer this? Justin?
I can. For me, I mean, basically, I would say like having opened the options in NS itself more to sportsmen. Like for example, I have I have friends, international professional sportsmen, and so they ask me, so what are you doing now? I would say like, oh, I'm doing national service and serving in the army, and they'll always like half of them, surprisingly, they always go like, hey, I also serve the army. In fact, I'm serving it now because I'm part of the army. But my army, I'm doing sports in the army. So in a sense, their country has their government understands like the importance of sport in their culture, perhaps. So like even in Germany, okay, they also sponsor, the government sponsors their esport. They send masseurs with them, massage their hands and stuff like that. So yeah, I really think government support it's the one thing that really needs a lot of improvement on for me.
Can you specify, is there any specific kind of government support that would benefit, say, sports or even if fencing in particular?
I mean, we've all heard of SAFSA, but I don't think I ever really received any form of support from them. I mean, like, what is SAFSA?
My
Yeah, I mean, what is SAFSA even? There's no publicity on SAFSA whatsoever.
Sorry, what does
because
SAFSA stand for?
of Singapore Armed Forces Sports Association.
Okay.
Since it's like a sports army, so yeah, my first thing would go to like a sports army, because this could possibly solve a few problems. Like, let's say you have an athlete. Let's say perhaps maybe they win like Olympic Games, then after their sporting highlight age is over, let's say 28, then what happens then? Are they gonna use that $1 million they get from the Olympics for the rest of their lives? It's kind of tough. So I think that maybe a some form of sports army will really help with like even the future of these sportsmen.
I think for the SAFSA thing, right? Just to add on to what Justin just said, my dad was actually the captain of the volleyball team in SAFSA when he was a regular in the army. And apparently, the type of freedom that he got and the type of privileges that he got was insane. At least that's what he tells me. My dad might just be bullshitting me because he's my dad. He's apparently as troll as me. But the general idea of it, when I heard it from him, was that the type of seriously, like the type of privileges and the type of like offs and leaves whatsoever to actually play in the Salsa League, because they actually have like the leagues. I don't know how they actually competed. I'm gonna have to ask him about it again, but it's just from what I heard, it was insane. And I mean, as Justin mentioned, even as a sea games participant, he wasn't even given like privileges like this. So a way to maybe like improve, okay, if I had the authority modify the current NS system, it's not to actually modify any NS system, but to in fact implement newer systems to perhaps support sports or esports in general, or like like whatever it is that I mean, like I'm sure Singapore has a certain talent pool for many different things, like what Ruben mentioned, Tetris player that was world class. I had no bloody idea, because I think it's way out of my age and I never really gotten into like studying about that. But the thing is that I'm sure we have a talent pool for different things. It's just that whether or not it's actually supported during like national service, and it would actually make a very big difference. So my take on it, probably to, I think, implement a new system to support whoever has like uh abilities or talents to actually pursue something international in terms of sporting events or whatever type of events it may be, so long as it has a competitive spirit. Like, I mean, someone could be like the best handwriting in Singapore and he couldn't compete because it's not recognized, so that's one example or analogy right there,
Mhm.
Well, for me, actually, I'll just chime in with my 2 cents on this matter in terms of if I had the authority, what would I do to help improve the scene. Now, actually, this is where I kind of actually differ from what Ruben has been saying, where things should be very community based, and you can actually alienate or exile gamers from such a thing. I mean, I kind of was thinking along the ideas of a SAFSA type of organization as well. In Korea, they have the um, Air Force Ace, I believe that was the name of their army pro gaming team that later on became the Jin Air Green Wings, or was it Team 8 first and Jin Air Green Wings? I'm not exactly sure what's the order of that and what's the exact history of that happening. But I think if we are able to institutionalize certain aspects of it and get certain gamers recognized under these kind of schemes, it might be a way. And the thing about this is that I think it's the way the question is loaded, which makes me differ from Ruben's idea of things being very community driven and picking players more by what they represent rather than the game itself. Is simply because that authority in any bureaucracy has got limited time, limited resources, and sometimes you are forced to make a decision. In that case, I will have to select. Okay, I'm only going to help like these games A, B, and C, and that's one thing I would do.
Yeah, but the problem with that, unfortunately, is that what if that game that got dropped is your game? How will you feel about that? That's the challenge. The challenge
Yep.
is because you see, you have to balance between, like for example, there's Dota, there's LoL. What if you put someone in charge that says only one MOBA, only one FPS? Well, then what's going to happen? You end up with a miserable situation where you're not maximizing the talent you have available.
Yeah.
That's
Everybody will end
what I
up like
meant.
converting.
So like like some people say, well, Ruben, we miss the days where CS was the golden game. You know what I mean, the golden age.
Mhm.
And I say I don't really. I mean, it was great because I was on the correct ride But I can't imagine how great it was for other games
Break
that
players.
weren't. Yeah, I can't imagine. Well, I enjoyed Quake myself personally, by the way, just to be clear. But if you're an Unreal player or if you are a Battlefield player, right? The resource pool for you is not so great back then, At least now there's a lot more diversity, so I'm actually quite excited by that because you know what? People have a chance. People have a chance to pursue what they're really good at. You see, so this is the and again, even within SCOGA, we have these debates and discussions because there are no easy answers here, right? Let's be frank. So we have to try and find that balance where, okay, you're right, we need to make a decision, but at the same time, we don't want to cut off too many flowers before they even bloom, just to make all the grass green. It doesn't make sense. We got to let some flowers come up.
Okay, with that, we'll try to take one more question before I try to wrap this entire thing up. So we have this one from. Sorry, I'm trying to pick a question right now from chat. Did anything stand out to you guys previously?
I think someone asked, was it worth all this effort? Someone
Yeah.
asked that. I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah, I was looking for that one.
Uh,
Yes, does the panel thing is worth it for the effort you put in versus the returns? He wrote it in three. He wrote it in three parts. I have a question. Do you think it will be feasible for Singaporeans to continue this dream / profession of being a professional gamer? And if we think it's worth it for the effort versus the returns you get.
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, someone.
I
let's-
think
Let's start with the sports person first. So Justin, you want to share 2 cents on this as somebody who
Yeah.
is leading a rather balanced life?
Yeah, my 2 cents. Okay, so professional anything in effect. I mean, you have to think your future. What are you gonna have in this future? And in Singapore, I think you just have to have someone really willing and crazy enough to do it. I mean, what's the sailing Dr. Ben Tan? Yes. I mean, he wasn't say like exactly entirely professional, but I mean he got his name up in the world. So I don't think it's like say impossible. I really think that if you have that dream, you should keep going for it. I mean, it all takes that one person to make it that one time, and everybody can follow. So like, and honestly, if it's not a 5-year thing, even it might take 10 years. So yeah, I mean if there has to be a first step somewhere. So yeah. That's my thinking.
Okay, Anthony.
I think in Singapore, whether it's feasible or not is, I mean, it's up to anyone to say lah. I mean, que sera sera lah, whatever will be. The thing is that for me personally, I find that it might be feasible in the future, in the near future, or even in the future. Like what Justin mentioned, it might take 5, it might take 10 years, heck, it might take 15 years. But my passion towards gaming, my passion towards games and esports, or the game. I mean, like generally, like even like the PC IT stuff. It's just it's just really something that's burning really bright for me lah, which is why I dedicate my time, so much of my time, to actually playing and trying to be the best at this game, at the game that I'm currently playing. So if I wouldn't say that, like I said, like I wouldn't say that it's feasible at the present moment, but I think it's definitely worth it. The effort that I'm currently putting in, it might one day come up in the returns to that question actually.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's very interesting when I saw the words worth it. What stood out for me was worth it because it's another preoccupation of Singapore money. I think it's how you measure your success. Is success only definable through money and trophies? That's something you have to ask yourself. One of the most interesting advice I was ever given is this: the best job in the world is one where you're paid to do what you would have done for free. And I firmly think that if you really love gaming, whether you're paid or not in money, you would do it. You would be great and excel at it because it is what you were called to do. It is your gift. Do not confuse your gift with your qualification, like your education, your certificate. They are separate things. Like someone may be a doctor, but may be a fantastic cook. That's a gift. So always, if you look at what is it worth it. Like for me, right? Did I make millions or thousands of dollars even from gaming in my time? No, not at all. I never took a cent. But would I now, knowing that I would not have earned a cent, go back and say don't do it? No, I think I learned a lot from doing it. It is through gaming that I developed the skills I would have in my professional career to move forward, right? Could I have achieved the skills elsewhere? Sure, of course you can. But here's the thing, I had a bloody good time achieving those skills. Meeting people I would never have met, building networks around the world, and friends that I've kept till now. Now, why would I ever give that up? So, was it worth it? Yes, very worth it.
I mean, in terms of what's worth and what's not worth, I think what Ruben you brought up over there was definitely something that resonates a lot with me. One of my favorite American TV shows is called The Newsroom.
Yes,
You've watched The Newsroom?
I love it.
Yeah, there's like the finale of the first season is called The Greater Fool, and it talks about somebody in terms who does things that does not make sense in terms of economic principles, so that everybody can build on it, and so that everybody else in the country can profit on it. And the idea starts off with him being called a greater fool by the magazines and the tabloids and stuff like that, and then he realizes what is the meaning of the term the greater fool is somebody who doubles down, hunkers down, takes the hit for the team, and is the person who brings them and brings the country or the team or whatsoever to success in that case. So it's a much more greater complex system than that. If you have the time, please go watch that show. It is super good. I love it so much. And I think when it comes to making this leap of faith to pursue sports, esports, whatsoever, is something that we'll have to do. I mean, so many lines in movies that I can quote as well. How much did they pay you before you gave up on your dreams and stuff like that? This is a personal challenge I've had as well in the previous few months. I had, should I continue pursuing esports or should I sell out and do engineering, because that's what I'm studying now. That's what my parents wanted, and I think it's possible to have a good balance between both. But sooner or later we might face a situation where we are challenged and we are forced to choose between one or another when it comes to allocating resources and stuff like that. And you will have to ask yourself, will I never forgive and I ask myself this, will I ever forgive myself if I gave up my second chance at gaming, if I gave up this opportunity to help all these people that I'm working with right now in the League of Legends community? I told myself I could never forgive myself if I did that, even if I became like some top engineer and tens of thousands of dollars. It's something that goes beyond the value of money itself, and you can't just measure worth in terms of dollars and cents. It's also like in studying motivation, studying what people enjoy in jobs, there's three aspects to it. There's always the monetary aspect, the sense of autonomy, how much freedom you have in what you do, as well as your fulfillment of the job. And I think fulfillment is something that us as Singaporeans, we often overlook a lot on as to how fulfilling we find our tasks or our jobs or whatsoever it is.
Yeah, we one of our biggest sins is this. We try to replace intrinsic rewards with extrinsic rewards, and then when you remove the extrinsic rewards, people are no longer incentivized by the intrinsic rewards, and then the whole thing just goes down the drain. So I always try to remind gamers of, why did you play? Surely you did not start playing this game because of a big payday at the end.
Yep. I mean, like what Ruben mentioned, what's worth it is very subjective to each individual. I actually went to play in an international tournament. I met a lot of famous people. I met people that I watch on stream along with like every other like common spectator before I even hit the age of 20, and that's for me is it's just really amazing. And my first time on a plane was on the way to Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
that was me coming from a poor family.
Yeah.
I think that's worth it. Like I mean, the amount of effort that I put in, the time that I've invested in games and everything, it isn't just something that I do purely for the fun of it. It's something that I managed to, make something out of, and it's just what you. It's basically up to everybody how what they think is worth it, and how much are they willing to put in. Basically,
Okay, so with that, we've come to more or less an end of this podcast over here. But before we say our thanks and give our shout outs and stuff like that, I need to do one last thing over here. I need you guys to help me decide on what the next topic of esports in Singapore is going to be. So there's three options that I've come up with. The first one is going to be about women, feminism in esports, the presence of teams such as PMS, Galaxy, and should esports even have female-only tournaments? Then there was some controversy when Garena Philippines included some clauses that allowed a specific number of LGBT players per team, which created some uproar internationally as well. There was a League of Legends tournament. The second thing that I thought would be interesting to look at is mental health and esports. So in my time working as a coach for League of Legends, I've encountered quite a few people who have been medically diagnosed as having the depression. And I think that this is something that we haven't really had the time to look at yet. We're always talking about struggling and becoming relevant to the point where we actually see some of these people struggle with their own inner demons on the wayside as well. And when it comes to, say, the psychological effects of gaming, I can feel that it can go both ways as well. You can invite some professors from the university to perhaps try to talk on this issue. And the third one, perhaps something a little bit more boring, but this is something that people love to talk about: sponsorships, what's the climate of things going to be. We kind of addressed that a little bit here, and kind of, so it's going to be business and esports. Okay, so option one, women and esports in Singapore. Sorry, girls slash women and let me phrase it properly: females and esports in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is going to be mental health and esports in Singapore, and the third one is business and esports in Singapore. So can the people in the chat please just put up a number over there, 1, 2, or 3. Let me know if there's a specific topic you guys would prefer. And same thing with the panelists. If you feel that one topic is particularly more interesting to you, or if you have something in mind, do let me know after this podcast. Any thoughts right off the bat on which topic should we approach next?
From us right now?
Sorry?
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you asking us?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, they're all very good topics, but the second one, I think you definitely need to bring in some subject matter experts because I am no counselor. Yeah. But
I think
the first and the third for me appeal because both I have strong opinions on both. So 1 and 3 would be very interesting.
Justin, any thoughts?
Yeah,
What
the
sounds
first
the
one
most
about-
interesting to you?
The first one about gender was the most interesting to me. I didn't actually think there would be any dispute at all. I mean, who would have known? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's something I really would like to hear about.
Anthony?
I think generally speaking, as a player, right? I would think that it's really a toss up between first and the third, because females in esports in general or females in gaming in general tend to have a different type of bias, whereas it comes to the competitive scene. Whereas business in esports in Singapore is I think it's still very underdeveloped. Maybe you could put it that way. That I have encountered players with terrible contracts, binding them to certain organizations, and that certain problems. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you more or less know what I'm talking about. And I have seen really bad contracts signed by people who needed that that sponsorship from them, and it turned out in the long run very badly for the players themselves. So I mean, do whatever chat says, I guess.
Okay, so I'm just gonna leave this podcast up here running for about, say, I'll put it at the poster screen. I'll leave it there for about 15 minutes. So this will be running up to 12:20, and then I'll just collate all the numbers in the chat. You guys discuss it on the chat. I'll note down the numbers, and then after that, I'll perhaps release an announcement next week. Perhaps a call to action on finding panelists and the like. And with that, we've come to the end of this podcast. So once again, thank you so much. You guys have been fantastic guests. You guys have, I believe, educated myself and the audience quite a fair bit on the inner workings of how the intricacies of esports, sports, as well as SCOGA's position on all of this. And it was great having all of you guys. You guys have any shout outs, any last words for the people watching?
Penmanship competitions, man.
Penmanship competitions. Justin,
Oh,
anything
but-
from you?
Not really, but thank you so much for your time. And
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. On a more serious note for myself, I just like to thank my family and whoever has been supporting me. Lah. I mean, I've been affiliated with various organizations throughout the time and players throughout different games. Big thanks to all of them for, pushing me up to this point. Lah. It's not easy playing games and trying to make something out of it in Singapore, for sure. And yeah, I mean, look forward to Dreamscape being Asia's number one. Lah. I'm just going to call it that like right now. Lah. Hope for the best.
Ruben?
Yeah, on behalf of SCOGA, just thank you for having us on your podcast. It was a great discussion. Thanks a lot for sharing your views and questions to the participants in the chat. It's good because when we get your questions, we can see where your concerns are, and we will react to it. Trust me on this. We're gamers, and we too hate it when people don't reply to us, don't talk to us. So we will do whatever we can. We hope to get your continued support as we try to elevate Singapore into a leadership role in the region and improve the situation for all our gamers. And we look forward to your support for Aegis as well, which is coming up. So the qualifier will have more details later. Right now, we're still negotiating a few things.
Nice.
But we really hope that we can get some support. And if you see us at events or whatever, don't be afraid. Just come say hi. We may look a bit busy or grumpy or whatever. That's just because we're working. We're working our butts off. But come say hi to us. Don't be afraid. We're okay.
Yeah, now it's my turn. So this podcast was brought to you by Team Vestigio. My name is Jensen J. Songo. I serve as the host for these podcasts, and I currently coach both Team Vestigio and the subsidiary team Nyanzone as well. Do check out the Enzo Gaming League. There are a LAN shop at Farrer Park. They have some great gear. It's a great place to scrims and get your practice down at. And with that, we've come to the end of this podcast once again. Thanks to first of all, thanks to the panelists. You guys have been awesome, and thanks to our audience, the chat, very civil, lots of fantastic discussions out there, and we hope to keep this conversation active, and we'll be having one next month. I'll be releasing the title after you guys vote in the chat. So once again, I'll be leaving this up until about 12:20. Comment in the chat, let us know what topic you're going to be talking on. Option number 1 is about women in esports. Option 2 is about mental health, particularly depression in esports. Option number 3, business and esports. And with that, we've come to the end of this podcast. I think I've said thank you for the third time, but once again, that's how happy I am to have you guys over here. Thanks so much. And with that,
It's been a pleasure.
I'm signing
Have a
off.
great night, guys.